Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Cut the BS. Of course, there is no BS without me. I am your host, Brandon Schneid, live in the Game On Wisconsin studios, brought to you by Artec Ventures. The goal at Artec Ventures is to collaborate closely live in founders throughout all the investment and fundraising stages, turning their visions into successful companies. Since 2020, Artec Ventures has helped turn great ideas into profitable businesses that make an impact on industries, communities, and beyond. Again, I am your host, Brandon. Please go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Brandon_Schneid. Also, don't forget to follow Game On Wisconsin, wherever you have social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Game On WI. Thank you again for tuning into another, what they always seem to be, jam-packed episode. Very excited. There is no Thursday night football tonight, so there's plenty of Packers talk, football talk we can dive into. If you guys are on the live stream, thank you for tuning in. Good evening to you. If you are listening on your smart device, wherever you may be, thank you guys for giving my show a listen. It's an absolute honor and privilege to be here talking about our favorite teams with you. And of course, we're going to talk about those Green Bay Packers. But tonight, I am joined by a special guest, a great friend of mine, a current co-host. We have a little bit of a timeout period with a incoming baby that's due any day now. And
Monday.
He looks familiar. He probably is familiar. He should be familiar. Ryno Alberts. You can follow him on Twitter at Sports Talk Ryno. Ryno, good evening, sir. Welcome to Cut the BS. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. It's good to be back temporarily to shake the rust off and get my podcast shoes back on. It's good to be a part of Cut the BS. This is my first appearance. Chalupa yep. Batman's father, as Jacob would say in the chat.
And but yes, I knew he was gonna jump in today because we go back and forth all day in our group chat. And as soon as I don't know if he even knew you were coming on. He might have. I don't know. But before we kick off anything, we do want to, or at least I want to take just a few minutes to talk a little bit about the news that happened yesterday. I believe it was about this time yesterday evening. The news circulated throughout the NFL world and the world in general that legendary coach and broadcaster John Madden passed away at the age of 85. Ryno, just a few minutes if you want. Take the floor is yours. Your thoughts on John Madden and what he meant to you or what he meant to football in general.
You know what? It's sad, and this isn't an insult to the younger generation, but it's sad that there's an entire generation of people who only recognize John Madden because of a video game. Yes, Madden football on PlayStation and Xbox is one of the biggest video games that exists in the industry. But a lot of people don't realize that John Madden is one of the biggest ambassadors to the NFL that arguably has ever existed. I mean, he was a legendary coach with the Oakland Raiders, and then he was one of the greatest broadcasters of all time. I mean, his color commentary with Pat Summerall is up there with the greats. It's up there with the Al Michaels. It's up there with the Joe Bucks and the Troy Aikmans. He's one of the legendary figures in NFL history. If you had a Mount Rushmore of just overall figures for the NFL, John Madden has a great argument to be on that Mount Rushmore. And there was a little bit of controversy swirling around around Twitter yesterday, the dark web, as you like to call it, that I would like to clear the air on. A lot of these at-home doctors and couch doctors took to Twitter to really slander John Madden in terms of his concussions with the video game and how kids really started playing football based off of what they saw in the video game. And that's not even remotely close to being true. I mean, you go back into the early 90s, and John Madden was one of the biggest proponents of concussion safety and player safety. I mean, he spoke about it at length during broadcasts whenever a player was hurt and appeared to have a concussion. So he was a huge proponent to player safety. He was a huge proponent of concussion awareness. So I would like to clear the air as far as that is concerned. But yeah, I mean, what can you not say about John Madden? I mean, he's just one of the legends. He's one of the all-time greatest in terms of NFL figures. So remembering him is going to be huge. And like I said, he deserves a spot on that Mount Rushmore of NFL people.
I remember when my dad, and this is in the 90s, mid 90s, there was two things about John Madden. I remember the Sega Genesis game when it first started coming out. I remember that being a big deal. I remember people like going crazy about football on like a video game, before it was like Sonic and Zelda and, people were like football, like football. So that was the other thing. And then with John Madden, you knew it was a big game when you saw Pat Summerall and John Madden. Obviously, they called the Packers Super Bowl victory in 31. And you knew when those two were in the studio, and you knew when John Madden, he broke down the game. If you were even a child, from what I remember, I learned a lot by just listening to him talk, and his little stint he did in The Little Giants, the movie. When I was a kid, when that came out, like seeing him, and you're like, man, I play his game. I see him on TV, hearing him talk about how he's successful in football, and what it takes was cool at that moment. And he was an icon. I mean, he was just an icon. It sucks. He lived a heck of a life, 85 years old. I hope at one point I'm able to say I lived to be 85. I mean, it was a big life. He did a lot. He accomplished a ton. He's the most winningest coach in Raider history, and obviously Super Bowl and the broadcasting side of everything. He was extremely successful, as Mike McCarthy likes to say, highly successful coach. He was truly a highly successful coach. So, but yeah, the world is definitely going to miss him. And Jacob reminds me that I am old, so thank you. I am aware, but Ryno is older, Jacob, so I'm not that old.
All right.
We're going to dive into some Packers. Go ahead. Go for it.
Fun fact about Madden. I don't know if a lot of people knew this, but he was absolutely terrified of flying.
Yes.
And he took his private coach bus to every broadcast that he did.
He did.
Whether it was Monday nights, Sunday nights, it didn't matter. He would get done with the game, hop on his coach bus, and he would travel to the next destination, even if it was 3,500 miles across the country.
He did, dedication. And he in the Little Giants too. That's what he's getting into, and his spot in the movie is. But yeah, no, he's a legend. He's an icon. He's definitely going to be missed, and we just wanted to take a few minutes to remember him. But we're going to talk about for a little bit. I was talking to you about the pre-show. Thursdays are just a weird show because you're kind of caught in the middle between the Packers played 4 days ago and now they play in like 3 days. So we're going to talk a little bit about Saturday's Christmas Day victory, which, as the topic on the ticker says, the Packers got a gift on Christmas. Yes. They did win that game 24-22. It came down to a Baker Mayfield interception that caught a lot of controversy, really just on Bears Twitter. Whether it was a flag or not, and that's okay. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. Packers do improve to 12-3. They're looking at the number 1 seed, a win on Sunday, a Cowboys loss. They can clinch the number 1 seed. Your thoughts on Saturday's Packers Browns game?
It was a game that really should not have come down to a 2-point victory. I mean, they had 5 sacks on Baker Mayfield. They had 4 interceptions, one of which was the game clincher by Rasul Douglas. They really got ran over. They got punched in the mouth in the trenches. Their defensive line just could not make any kind of penetration. Brown's offensive line was making their way to their second progressions and blocking the linebackers. They ran for 8.8 yards per carry as a team. I mean, that's unheard of. Usually you have one guy that'll break off and he'll average 7-8 yards a carry as one guy. They averaged 8.8 yards per carry as a team. And, the Packers really shot themselves in the foot there early in the fourth quarter. They had the 3 and out. I believe it was 2 minutes into the fourth quarter. They had the 3 and out that really let Cleveland back into the game. And I mean, it's one thing to have an opportunistic defense. And we've talked about this in prior shows. Opportunistic defenses are one thing. That depends on whether or not your defense is playing good overall. I like to see an opportunistic defense make an interception here, make a sack there. But allowing 400 yards of offense, allowing over 200 yards on the ground is not a good look for the defense.
It's concerning because the trend is going towards the downward spiral. If you look over the past 4 weeks, they're giving up almost 29 points per game all the way through that to that Vikings game in Minnesota, which they lost 34-31. For me, it's, and everything you said, you're right. Like you're spot on. They allowed 219 yards on the ground. Ernest Johnson, I think he averaged like 14.7 yards per carry. Yeah. I mean, it was insane. Obviously that speaks for itself. For me, it was the third down. Cleveland only converted 1 4th down, but third down, they allowed 7 out of 12 third down conversions. That's, to me, that's the upsetting point, because like you said, Green Bay is an opportunistic defense. They're at times they are able to take the ball away. Sunday, they caught the ball when they played the Vikings a couple of weeks ago, and we'll talk about the Vikings game coming into Sunday. They weren't able to catch the football. So it was good to see them get those 4 turnovers. Not entirely sure where Baker was throwing the ball. I know he was coming off COVID and has a bad shoulder. It is what it is. But for me, it's not being able to get off the field, man. Like, it's not, you got to get off the field on third down, and to allow a team 8 for 13 between third and fourth down attempts is just, you're going to lose against you give Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, say what you want, Matthew Stafford, you give these guys 7, 8 out of 10, 13, 14 attempts for a first down. They're going to score touchdowns. They're not going to make a 4 interception type game. It's concerning because to me, that's where the issue is with this defense, is not being able to get off the field on third down.
And, the biggest thing for me looking at this game is it almost should have been a loss. I mean, you have a coach, Kevin Stefanski, he's not as tenured, he's not as successful as, your Matt LaFleur's, your Bill Belichick's, et cetera, but it was because of him ultimately that the Browns did not end up winning this game. They should have rode Nick Chubb on that final drive for the entire drive. They had all 3 timeouts. They were 15 yards at most away from being in field goal territory, and for some reason they went to 3 straight passes from Baker Mayfield. I don't understand that decision. I mean, obviously I was happy it happened, but I mean, that was just a horrible coaching miscue by Kevin Stefanski, and ultimately a game that, it's one of those games. I make this point. A lot of people don't like making this point. The Packers didn't win this game. The Browns lost the game. And that's the difference between these two teams. I mean, the Packers were outplayed by the Browns. They scored 3 points in the second half. They were outgained by almost 100 yards on offense. They were outplayed in almost every facet of the game, minus a couple of miscues by Baker Mayfield. And say what you want about the officiating. There was bad calls on both sides of the field. And I would actually like to very quickly make this point about officiating. There's a trend with officiating over the years where, you have a 2-3 year stretch where they're calling everything. They're calling things that they shouldn't be calling. They're making way too many penalties. Then that trend slowly starts to come back down. Games seem like they're officiated equally. And then the trend swings downward where they're not calling things that they should call. I mean, that opening drive where there was that 41, 42-yard screen pass, it was clear holding right on the sideline, next to the sideline judge.
On Chris Barnes.
And it was missed. Yep. And there was calls that were missed on both sides of the field, I'll admit that. But it seems like officiating as a whole in the NFL is at that downward part of the spectrum where they're really not calling a whole lot. And you see that league-wide. I mean, we've seen that in a lot of primetime games, especially. We saw that against the 49ers earlier in the year, where there was just a lot of stuff that wasn't called. So I think it's not, a lot of Bears Twitter likes to say, oh, Packers get away with everything. It's everyone. Everyone is missing calls. And so I don't mind in particular situations where they're allowing a DB and a wide receiver to play physical. That's how the game should be played. But it's officiating as a whole that's really missing a whole lot of calls right now. And that trend will start to come back up where things will be called equally. And we'll see that for a couple of years. And then it'll go to the top side of it.
And I agree with you. And the thing about it with the Rasul Douglas interception at the end of the game, I know you had 2 in that game. He's okay with where he was at with that jersey tug, because where Donovan Peoples-Jones was at the top of his route. I mean, he used his elbow and arm to completely separate from Rasul Douglas.
Oh, yeah, he drove him up 5 yards. Yeah.
And if you saw Shannon Sharp, controversial follow on Twitter, if you follow him when it comes to sports takes, he said it himself, and he's a tight end. He's a former receiving tight end, and he was like, that's a clean play by 29. I mean, you are allowed to have there if there's going to be physical play. And the cool thing about that game was no defensive pass interference, no offensive pass interference, and no defensive holding was called in that game. So people that are going to sit there and throw their rubber bricks at the TV and say I was a bad call or a bad non-call, they didn't call it all game. It was not called. They allowed them to play. They were as consistent as and I know I'm on the beneficial side of that because obviously my team won, but had they had not called that, we saw it in the NFC Championship game where they were calling everything, and then Alan Lazard gets tugged on his jersey and it results in an Aaron Rodgers interception, and you don't call that, but you were calling everything else. If they're consistent, I'm fine with that. That's what I want to see out of the officials. So I'm good with that. I'm good with the no call. Rasul Douglas, dude, continues to be out of this world. What is it? 4 interceptions for Green Bay. I mean, Brian Gutekunst.
5.
Is it 5? You're right. 5 in 10 games. Yeah, 5
in
in 10 games. Number 1 seed, just a shot away. But speaking of Brian Gutekunst, we're going to kind of move on from the Packers-Browns game. Packers won 24-22. like you said, ugly game, 3 points in the second half. And I hope Jacob is still listening, because if anybody doesn't believe that toe injury is bothering Aaron Rodgers, 3 points in the second half. And you could also make the argument too. I didn't bring this up today. Matt LaFleur might have that in the back of his mind too. And we saw conservative play calling in that second half. And I know I said we were going to move on, and now we're back to the Packers and Browns
very
game.
quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Very quickly, I do have a statistic that helps our argument that it's dampening Rodgers' play. So 10 passes that went 10 yards or less in that game, Rodgers was 21 of 26 for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's passes 10 yards or less through the air. He was 7 of 7 on passes behind the line of scrimmage. On passes that went further than 10 yards downfield, he was 3 of 8. Mm-hmm. Now, Rodgers is one of the most accurate deep pass guys in the entire NFL, especially on passes between, I'd say, 15, 30 yards. He's making those all day. Now, there was the one drop to Devontae Adams. That's obviously not on Rodgers, but
God, I was so mad after, out of all people. Yeah, come on.
There was quite a few throws that Rodgers makes throws off his back foot a lot, but that's when he has a guy. That's when he knows that he's going to hit that guy, and he knows he can physically make that throw. There were a lot of throws in that game on Saturday off his back foot because he had to, not because he wanted to.
It's bothering him, and you gotta also wonder, like, is Matt LaFleur protecting 12 from 12?
Yeah.
Is he got stepped on twice by both, two of them by his one by Lucas Patrick and the other one by Royce Newman. I mean, those are 300+ pound guys stepping on his toe in the cold weather. Like, and like you said, conservative play calling in the second half. They only scored 3 points. 3 of them were 3 straight runs in that third and fourth quarter, both where they went 3 and out. You never know if that's Matt LaFleur being like, okay, like I don't want to risk it here. We're trying to get the number 1 seed, but obviously there's a bigger picture for this team going forward, and we'll see. But going forward, was it yesterday? Yesterday, Aaron Rodgers made some comments at his post-practice press conference regarding retirement. Possibly, he mentioned not playing on another team, or at least that wasn't in the front of his mind. What were your thoughts surrounding the comments brought to you by Aaron Rodgers yesterday?
No, we spoke about this in our group chat that we have, and I firmly believe right now that if Rodgers plays in 2022, it is going to be with the Green Bay Packers. I do not believe he wants out. I believe his relationship with Brian Gutekunst has been healed, and it's on a lot better terms than it was, say, a year ago. In terms of his retirement comments, I'm really starting to lean towards, if Green Bay wins a Super Bowl this year, that will really raise the chances that he retires. I think he is chasing that one final ring.
Yeah.
And I do not think that Rodgers wants to go out the same way that Brett Favre went out, or even Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning did get the ring in his final season, but Peyton Manning was a fraction of his former self in that last year. I mean, the only reason why they even won that Super Bowl is because they had an all-time great defense. Otherwise, they have no shot at that with the way Peyton Manning played. So there's a couple things that linger with Rodgers. A, he doesn't want to go out as a fraction of his former self. He wants to be the elite quarterback we all know that he is, and he wants to win with that MVP. I mean, that MVP is going to weigh on him too, but he wants to be at the top of his game when he leaves the game. And B, if he's chasing the ring and he wins it this year, he really has no more motivation left. I mean, yeah, go out and get another ring, but the argument behind Rodgers pretty much since 2010 is, oh, he needs another. The argument people make for quarterbacks is you're not an elite quarterback until you win a ring. Well, then the argument after that becomes, well, you're not an all-time great unless you have multiple rings. And obviously the Rodgers versus Brady debate, well, I mean, that'll continue until the day we die. Well, what's going to make that argument better? Another ring, obviously. So I really think, we saw him question his love for the game and his passion for the game last year when we saw him on Jeopardy and really try to become the next host of Jeopardy. I think a ring really, really dampens that. I think a ring takes that motivation away from him. So I would put the chances of him retiring after a Super Bowl championship at 50%, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And when the news broke last year and we did the draft show on our previous show, we were kind of soaking it in when it all happened because it was so fresh. It was that morning or that afternoon that Adam Schefter broke the news. There was legitimacy to that, tweet or to that report. Like, he was seriously debating retiring. We saw he was out in Hawaii. We, out with his girlfriend, and it was kind of all over the place. I think that was real. Like, I think those thoughts for Aaron Rodgers went through like his head. Like, yeah, he's He's been successful. He's, in my opinion, and I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it. I know Tom Brady has 7 championships. Tom Brady has ruined how we look at quarterbacks with those 7 championships.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback. If you don't know them and you put them on tape and you're like, okay, who's better? Everybody 10 out of 10 is going to say this dude. He's making throws, running to his left, throwing it 60 yards to Jeff Janis in the end zone. Like, I mean, so Tom Brady, number one, has ruined how we look at quarterbacks. But number two, those emotions, those thoughts were, in my opinion, I think were real with Aaron Rodgers. He saw the Jordan Love pick. Now, again, I've gone on public record, both on Twitter and in front of a microphone, defending Brian Gutekunst for that draft pick because prior to 2019 or prior to 2020, Aaron Rodgers was on a little bit of a decline. I know in 2019 he had a better year, but I mean, 25 to 4 touchdowns, although that ratio is incredible. It wasn't what we were used to and accustomed to with Aaron Rodgers. So obviously that draft pick, whether Aaron Rodgers denies it or not, it obviously rubbed him the wrong way. He wanted to probably see a different playmaker be added to the roster, somebody that could help him in 2020 and beyond. But those emotions were real. I think they're still real. The way Aaron Rodgers talks about gratitude, I think every press conference he uses the word gratitude and love and emotion, and that's real. And you're seeing it on the field. I don't want to say he's a little bit like Favre, but he's kind of turned into a little bit of emotion on the field. Now, we used to see Aaron Rodgers, he would do the fist pump after he would score a touchdown and be on his way. I mean, he's having a good time out there, man. I mean, when you watch Brett Favre play, and I know you watched it, and anybody that's a Packer fan that was born, within the last 20, 30 years, you probably watched Brett Favre and you saw that kid throw a touchdown, run up there and jump in his teammates' arms. And that's what you're kind of seeing with Aaron Rodgers. And I don't think he's going to play for another team. Like, I'm going to be, he's not playing for another team. He's not going to go. I know there was some talk on local radio out here in Wisconsin that he was going to go to wherever Nathaniel Hackett goes, Jacksonville, Denver. He's not going there. Like, they're not, first off, he's not going to Denver to play in, he's not going to Denver to play in a division with Patrick Mahomes and
Justin Herbert.
I'm losing my train of thought here.
God isn't necessary.
Our buddy Jacob.
You can just call me Jacob. You don't have to call me God. I was just checking on something here in the background.
No, that's not what you were doing. You know what we're talking about.
Did you really come into this podcast with that hat on?
Yeah, it's a big day tomorrow, my friend.
Is it tomorrow? A very bad day for you tomorrow.
I don't think it's going to be very bad.
Michigan and Georgia. Is that it?
Tomorrow night they can win.
Georgia's going to smack Michigan like a stepchild.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I got a bowl game tonight. It doesn't start till 9:30. That's going to be rough. The Badgers take on Arizona State.
Is that tonight?
It's at 9:30. Kickoff at 9:30.
The rerun of the last time I remember Wisconsin playing Arizona State.
Oh my God, those Pac-12 officials, dude.
That was kneel down spike thing where I was reset the ball. That was a non-con game, right? Or was that was just a non-conference game?
It was just a non-con, right? But it's I mean, that year we had, I think it was 2 losses that year, and that was one. Obviously, that was one of them. But getting back on track, Jacob, thoughts on Aaron Rodgers' recent comments? I know we had a lot to talk about in our infamous group chat, but what are your thoughts surrounding number 12 talking about not leaving retirement off the table?
Yeah, you guys know that that song that Tom Brady plays after playoff games in the background. Bum, ba-na-na, bum, bum. We ain't going nowhere.
I know what you're talking about.
Well, he ain't going nowhere. Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Green Bay Packer next year, and I cannot wait.
I hope you never sing karaoke.
I agree with you. There's 2 things to it. I think he really is contemplating retirement. If he wins a Super Bowl and a 4th MVP, I mean, it puts him past Tom Brady, puts him past Peyton Manning in MVPs. It puts him past Brett Favre. He wins another Super Bowl that clearly
him with Peyton, doesn't it?
I think
Peyton has 5.
Peyton has 5.
Peyton has 5 MVPs.
Then it's Brady that has 3.
Yeah,
one of them has 3. Brady has. It might be Brady. Yeah.
Brady has 2. Favre has 3. He won 3 in a row. But I think
there was somebody else that had 3.
Brady won 2007, obviously that year where they set every record imaginable. And then I believe 2010, the year the Packers won the Super Bowl, he was a unanimous MVP. He may have won another one in there at some point, but I remember those two. I can't remember another one. Brady just hasn't been about the numbers. I mean, we know the deal when it comes to Brady.
Brady won MVP in 2017 as well, so he's got
that's the other one. Okay.
Yeah.
So he would separate with Brady then, as far as MVPs. Mm-hmm. So if he wins the Super Bowl, he obviously goes out with 2. He has 4 MVPs. He's not ever going to catch Tom Brady as far as reigns, but he puts him back on.
Man, would that be great though?
John Elway. It would be great.
Win 6 in a row in Green Bay to retire.
So I don't think he's going to another team, but I think there's the 2 possibilities are retirement or Green Bay. And I think if they win the Super Bowl this year, he's probably retires. And if they don't win the Super Bowl, I think he comes back.
Well, like I was telling you earlier, we saw Aaron Rodgers question his own motivation last year. We all saw it publicly when he took on the Jeopardy role for a couple of weeks, and he did try. I mean, he actively tried to become the full-time host of Jeopardy, and we all knew that the deal was you either play football or you host Jeopardy. So had he been given the role of Jeopardy host, he probably would have retired last year, and we wouldn't be talking about Aaron Rodgers right now. So his motivation has already been questioned. He came back because he wanted to win a Super Bowl. He knew that there was a legitimate chance in Green Bay to win a ring with Matt LaFleur as his head coach. If he wins that ring this year, he really has nothing left to chase. Even if he doesn't win the MVP, if he shits the bed the next couple of weeks and they go in as the number 2 seed, if he craps the bed the next couple of weeks and he goes in as the number 2 seed, but they still go on to win the Super Bowl, I don't think he necessarily cares about that 4th MVP award. Would he like it? Yes. Does he care about it? No. What he cares about is that ring. So if he wins the 2nd ring, it's natural that his motivation level drops. I mean, what more does he have to play for other than his love of the game? Sure. But his odds of retiring increase significantly if they do win the ring.
I think the odds increase. But I don't think he'll do it. I think that we were talking about this last night, me and Maggie Loney, about how if Rodgers, so he's going to end this season somewhere around 450 touchdown passes as a Packer, somewhere in that range, depending on if he plays next week, I suppose maybe a little less than that, but he's in that range now. He's at 445 right now.
Yep.
So he's going to end somewhere close to that. If he plays 2 more years with the way that he normally plays, he's going to hit 500 touchdown passes as a Packer. Obviously that's never been done before. And if he brings Adams back with him, which I presume he would, Adams also has a shot with 2 seasons like his normal self to break Don Hudson's record of 99 touchdowns as a Green Bay Packer. So I think those are things that he will want to chase eventually. My thought on the whole thing has always been, when it comes to football, Aaron is very smart. And he's going to realize, and I think he's even starting to realize, that's why you're getting some of these reflective comments and stuff from him, that his best situation is here in Green Bay as a Packer, and playing in players that play all of their life in one career, or all of their career in one place. Those guys tend to get revered more than guys who move. I mean, say what you will. Tom Brady's resume is bulletproof. You can't say anything about that, but there is some awkwardness and some weirdness to Joe Montana's, whose resume is relatively bulletproof. You talk about Joe Namath playing in different places, even Favre, Peyton, same thing. And think about Favre. I love Brett Favre. He's one of my favorite players in the history of the team. He was my hero. He's the reason I'm a Packers fan.
Yeah.
But there is still kind of a stain from the fact that he went to the Vikings. And I mean, if he had just gone to the Jets and retired, maybe it's a different conversation. I get it. Players typically outage the places they're at. That's why things like Elway playing his entire career in Denver is as special as it is, because it just doesn't happen that often. But I think Rodgers has realized he can have, another 3-4 year extension, retire at the end of that contract, and then go out 4 years. He'll have every record in Packers history and kind of make them. I mean, I don't want to call him untouchable, because I guess I thought Favre's records were probably untouchable at the time, but Rodgers still, to me, with Matt LaFleur, can play till he's 45 if he wants to. They'll keep the team around him as much as they can. They'll keep this offensive line in front of him. That's the stuff. Everybody talks about receivers, and I get it. Fantasy football rules everything, and fantasy football has poisoned football analysis, and so has I'm just going to use the overarching term of analytics, because I think analytics have their place, but it has also poisoned the way that we think about football, because nobody ever talks about offensive lines when we're talking about situations for Rodgers. I know 2 of them are hurt, and it may be a full year before we see both of them again, but you mean to tell me he goes anywhere else, he's going to be being blocked for by David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins? Those are 2 of the best players in the league on the offensive line. Then you add in Billy Turner, who's pretty damn good. Yosh Nijman, who's turned out to be pretty damn good.
He's turned out to be better than I think people thought.
And Goody is going to invest in the offensive line because ever since he became the general manager, he has signed at least 1 free agent and drafted at least 1 guy every single year. And they've drafted 3 each of the last 2 years on the offensive line. And those guys have all been contributors. And you see this year, I mean, whenever anybody complains about drafting an offensive lineman, you just point to this year's group and just be like, guys, they're playing their 4th and 5th preferred tackles. Like the Packers should not be 12-3 with their 4th and 5th preferred tackles. Like, do you guys remember the game in Arizona 6 years ago when they played Don Barclay and Josh Walker? And they got smoked.
They were turnstiles.
Last year they got smoked without Bakhtiari. I mean, you notice
so bad. It was so bad they had to move J.C. Treader, who was one of their centers, to play left tackle. J.C. Treader, God bless him, not a left tackle. That should not have happened. And the Packers have made that work. And then you've got all those guys. I think they'll bring back, Adams and Cobb and keep him happy that way. And then they have that group in front of him to where not only is it best chance for happiness, for prestige, but I also think at the end of the day, it's going to be his best chance to win, even with a roster that becomes somewhat compromised with his new contract and Adams and all that cap stuff that nobody understands.
Ryno, you realize when Jacob wearing the Michigan hat was naming key offensive linemen, he failed to mention Ohio State center Josh Myers.
That's because John Runyon's better than him and went to the superior school.
John Runyon.
See,
John Ryno, I got to get these jokes in while I can because
John Runyon Jr.
shit out of us, so I got to get them in while I can.
John Runyon Jr. is going to be really good in this league, and he's going to be there all next year because Elton Jenkins has obviously a torn ACL.
He's
got COVID now too.
Elton Jenkins does.
Yeah, they put him on the COVID
I didn't even. I open Twitter in the morning and I just wait because I'm like, at this
I've been
point
doing that the last 2 days.
I mean, at this point, it's like who, and then you get kind of comfortable because you're like, well, it can't be Rodgers, can't be Devontae. We're okay.
Shouldn't be Dylan.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. Yeah, like we should be okay. So, well, my next question is kind of a layup. We'll just go over it real quick because I have it up there. The uncertainty with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously with the retirement possibility in his brain, the Packers are 12-3. They're looking at the number 1 seed. If they win outright, they'll have it. There's a bunch of other ways they can get it going into this weekend and then week 18, which is weird to say still. Is this a Super Bowl or bust? Is this it? Like, is this a Super Bowl or bust for this Packers team again? Who I think don't quote me, but I think it's the first team in NFL history to have 3 straight 13-win seasons. Yep. Is this, and I'll start with you, Ryno, is this a Super Bowl or bust?
So if you would have asked me this question back in, say, week 1 or week 2, I would have answered with a very hard and sharp yes. It's a Super Bowl or bust season. With the development of the relationship between Rodgers and Gutekunst, and we know it's a lot better than it was before. We know it's pretty much all but healed. I would not say Super Bowl or bust because I do believe if they don't win the Super Bowl, Rodgers is 100% back under center in Green Bay. I don't think retirement's an option for him if they lose because he, like Jacob said, he knows his best option is in Green Bay. And we talked about this in our group chat. Rodgers has been one throughout his entire career to make backhanded comments, to make under-the-table comments, be very passive-aggressive. I don't think he would be speaking this positively about Brian Gutekunst if there was still animosity between the two of them. So when I hear the question Super Bowl or bust, I don't think it is because Rodgers will 100% be back. And if he's back, Adams is probably 85% back. With those two and the team around them, however they figure out with the cap is magic. I have no idea how that works. With this team,
neither does anybody else.
With this team in 2022, they have just as good of a chance to be the number 1 seed yet again and go, the distance and try and win another ring. So no, I don't think it's Super Bowl or bust.
Jacob.
I think the quarterback said it before the season started. I mean, I guess it depends on what you're saying Super Bowl or bust means, but this is title town. It's title or disappointment. And this team, like you mentioned, 3 straight years, 13-3 13 wins. You imagine they'll get there. They'll either beat the
Yeah.
Vikings Sunday or Detroit next week and get that 13th win. 2 straight NFC title games and the chance to have the road to the Super Bowl go through Lambeau Field. I know that didn't work last year, but you want as many. The Packers, the last 2 years are 7-1 at home. This year they have a chance to go 8-0 at home. They're one of the best home teams over a long period, like since Favre came in, long period of time. They just don't lose at home very often. I think there was a stat over the last 5 years or something like that. They won 90% of their home games, and that includes a couple years where they weren't very good. So they're a good home team, and it's Green Bay, man. This team is measured by titles. It's the same as, the Alabama Crimson Tide. You either win a title or you don't. What was it? Willie Davis said on Packers history once, like, it's Green Bay. You either win or you lose. And under Lombardi, it was either win or you lose.
Yeah, so
we lost. It was like 63 and 64. He's like, we lost for those 2 years. Now we have a chance to win again when he was talking about 1965. So not only that, but then you add in the last 2 years where you got railroaded in one NFC title game that you were probably, like, if you got some truth serum in some of those players, they were probably just happy to be there. Yeah. Like understanding what the expectations were in the season, first year head coach and all that stuff. And then last year, they blew it. I mean, they had a game in their house. They were the best team all season and they blew it. So you have that taste in your mouth. You go through all that shit in the offseason and get the quarterback back and go through everything like that and add these dudes to come in trying to make another run at a Super Bowl. If you don't, I think Bill Huber wrote this the other day. If they lose, this has a chance. Now, granted, I know we're all saying that we think Aaron's coming back, but this has a chance to be the longest and coldest offseason in franchise history if they don't win a title, because if they don't and Rodgers says he's out, now you're talking about Rodgers is gone. Adams probably not too far behind him. Some of these other guys, I think Zadarius Smith has played his last snap as a Green Bay Packer, regardless of whether Rodgers is back or not. But then you add in some of these other guys, like, are some of these dudes going to want to be in Green Bay if Jordan Love is the starting quarterback and a team is in a rebuild, reload, whatever you want to call it type of scenario? I think it's very much, if they win a Super Bowl, then it's almost like, okay, if Rodgers comes back, like, that's awesome. That's the cherry on top. If he retires, then it's like, okay, well, he retired, but we won a championship. But there is an opportunity that if they don't lose, that this is a nasty offseason that is even worse than last year's. And I didn't think anything would get worse than last year's, but it's certainly possible, because then you're looking at next year coming in with a severely compromised team from the group you had a year before and a new starting quarterback. You're talking about, like, going into the year with the expectation of 10-7 would be kind of cool. And it's been a long time since in Green Bay we've been saying we'd be okay with 10-7.
Let me ask you this question real quick, Jacob. Which scenario do you see having the greater chance of Rodgers returning? A Super Bowl victory or a Super Bowl loss?
Ooh. So they're in the Super Bowl regardless, right?
Well, no, not Super Bowl loss, not winning. I'll rephrase it to not winning the Super Bowl. So let's say 2021 ends with no Super Bowl championship, and then the other scenario is 2021 ends with a Super Bowl championship. Which scenario do you think has the better odds of Rodgers returning?
I would say probably if they lose. It depends on how they lose. Like, if they lose and Matt LaFleur kicks a field goal again and kind of takes the ball out of his hands and Rodgers is making backhanded snipes in the media after the game is over and all that stuff, then it could be possible. Like, if they just say they went for it, the same scenario, it's 31-23, they go for it, they don't get it, Brady runs the clock out. Rodgers is happy that they stayed aggressive. Rodgers is happy with the aggression the whole season. They just came up short. I certainly think he could come back in that kind of scenario. If they were to lose and kind of have the same scenario play out as last year where they kick the field goal and take the ball out of Rodgers' hands, then I think he could be pissed and just say, forget it, I'm out of here. Hack, go take the job in Denver and I'll meet you there in a few minutes, something like that. So, and I do think that, like, if Rodgers gets traded, I know that's not really what you asked, but, like, if Rodgers gets traded, I do think that there's only a few places that are desirable for Green Bay, and it kind of depends on how some of these teams want to go about it. Like, do the Giants want to give up on Daniel Jones? For Aaron Rodgers, they absolutely should, but do they want to? I don't know. The Broncos are a team that I think can put together an appealing trade package, and the same is true for the Carolina Panthers. If I tell you the answer, any scenario I give you, the answer is that you want Aaron Rodgers, right? Like if I tell you, would you rather have Aaron Rodgers or this trade package? The answer is Aaron Rodgers. But if Aaron doesn't want to be here, then you're kind of stuck between that rock and that hard place because you want to make things work, but they really can't. They can't stare him down because then he has more leverage with less years on his contract. But if Carolina comes in and says, hey, we'll give you Brian Burns and Jeremy Chin and 3 first-round picks, like that's not a bad haul for a 38-year-old quarterback that doesn't want to be there. The same for the Broncos if they say like, hey, we'll give you Bradley Chubb and Jerry Jeudy and 3 1s and a 2 or something like that. Like not a bad haul. But again, the roster around Jordan Love will not matter if Jordan Love is not good. Like that's the other part of this that gets, and we kind of talked about this a little bit in the chat that you guys have been mentioning. If Gutekunst trades Aaron Rodgers, whether Rodgers doesn't want to be here or otherwise, and Love stinks, like by 2023, Brian Gutekunst could be looking for another job. Like it could potentially get that. I don't think that would happen. Like I think they'd give him more than 1 year, obviously, but it could get that ugly to where, like, I mean, you guys saw it this off. There were people that were ready to fire Brian Gutekunst when that erroneous report came out that Rodgers would want him fired.
Mm-hmm. Well, I told you this in the group chat. There's a much exponentially larger chance that Brian Gutekunst faces Love being a bad pick before he ever gives up on Rodgers for Love. I don't see that happening under any scenario. If Rodgers wants to be back, there's no way Gutekunst says no.
And he fixes
it.
And he
should be.
And
if Rodgers says he wants to be back, unless you have this crystal ball that tells you, and nobody has this, by the way, if you have a crystal ball that says, hey, Jordan Love is Patrick Mahomes, then sure, you'd do that right now. But we don't know that. And the odds of him being Patrick Mahomes are slim to none. There's, Mahomes is 1 of 1. Rodgers is 1 of 1. And Aaron's going to be the 2-time reigning league MVP by the time we're having this. Like if that dude says he's going to wants to be your quarterback, then everybody's like, well, what's the roster going to look like around him? Is it worth it? Yes. The answer is yes. And Packer fans, trust me, I'm 30 years old. I've never lived in a world where the Packers don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback, and damn it, I don't want to. So I don't really give a shit what the rest of the roster looks like. If the MVP says he wants to be your quarterback, you do that, and then you build around him.
Yeah. It's always Super Bowl or bust, like you said, Jacob. It's both you guys make good points. Ryno, I agree with your point. It might not have to be. But I think when you have Aaron Rodgers, you have the 2-time, back-to-back and 4-time MVP and Super Bowl champion and Super Bowl 45. Like every year is a Super Bowl bust, especially with they just have a darn good roster and they're deep too this year, and that's proven with the amount of injuries. Jacob, I'm so glad actually that you came on this show today because
one of us
we are going to preview the Packers and Vikings, and I am a Packer fan.
Nope.
I love the Packers. I absolutely love the Green Bay Packers.
Don't start.
I love them. I own them. I haven't framed it yet, but I own them. But my non-favorite Packer player is coming to town, and that's Jeddah, a.k.a. Justin Jefferson.
Disclaimer for everybody that doesn't watch this show. Brandon is a player fan, very similar to the way people are just fans of LeBron
I knew
James.
you. Yeah, no, I hate LeBron with everything and every fiber.
That's
in my
fine,
body.
but you're a player fan in the same way.
To be fair, I like Justin Jefferson when he won the national championship with Joe Burrow. I loved him. I hated that Minnesota got him, but we'll talk about Jeddah at a different time. Ryno, we'll start with you. Initial thoughts on the Packers, and this is a Vikings team that's still in contention, 7-8. A tough loss against the Rams on Sunday in their home stadium. Coming to Green Bay, the weather is projected to be like around 0, something like that. Wind chill, I think, is a little bit negative, -4, -5, something like that. Packers haven't been able to stop the run over the past few weeks. They've given up, like I mentioned, over the last 4 weeks. Almost 29 points per game at 28.8. They're not going to have Adam Thielen. That's the Vikings. But they are going to have Justin Jefferson, and they did activate Dalvin Cook. So what are your thoughts heading into week 17 for a Packers-Vikings Sunday night matchup?
Well, a couple of the cliche bullet points when it comes to this game. Rodgers in his last 5 games, 1,500 yards, 17 total touchdowns, 70% completion percentage, 125.3 QB rating. That'll obviously that'll continue into this game with a very horrible Vikings defense. They're 29th overall in yards allowed. They're 27th in passing. I do see Rodgers having a big game. Obviously, another bullet point that I could say over his last 5 Sunday Night Football games since the beginning of the 2020 season, Rodgers is 5-0. He's got 17 total touchdowns. He's got like 135 QB rating. He owns Sunday Night Football over the last couple of seasons. Those are obviously things that can be thrown out the window. The biggest thing going into this game, Kirk Cousins, prime time on the road. If there was a dish that you could call disaster, that would be the recipe for it. That would be the recipe for disaster. Kirk Cousins is not going to come in here and have the exact same game he did week 11. He had a great game week 11.
He did.
300 some yards. I believe it was 4 touchdowns he had. Yep. Phenomenal game. The Packers defense did not play hardly anything at all. I mean, they didn't even get off the bus for that game. But
they didn't catch the ball either because he threw it to him.
He did. I would not trust my life, my upcoming child's life, in Kirk Cousins' hands if it was prime time on the road. I am extremely confident. And the biggest thing in my mind, this is my personal opinion, what we've seen over the last 2 weeks with Green Bay not being able to close out games, the close win on the road in Baltimore, the very close win at home on Saturday against the Browns, I think you're going to see some adjustments out of Matt LaFleur. One thing he has shown us since he's taken over as coach in 2019, he is not one for trends. You really don't see a whole lot of things continue with Matt LaFleur. He's not the greatest at in-game adjustments, but he is pretty good at week-to-week adjustments. So I would like to think that this trend of them not closing games out, not being aggressive in the fourth quarter changes. I think they get off to a hot start, and I think they finally do put that foot on the gas and keep it down the whole game.
I like it, Jacob. I'll go last because I got some Jetta thoughts.
Brandon wants to pick the Vikings. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's frigid. It's Green Bay. It's an opportunity for them to get the 1 seed. The Vikings have given the Packers some fits. They've won the last 2 times they've played against each other. Before that, Matt LaFleur had won his first 3 games against Minnesota, but he's obviously lost the last 2. Ryno just mentioned all the stuff with Rodgers. I just think there's another big night ahead for him. This Vikings defense sucks. And like the fact that they're even able to compete at any level is a testament to Mike Zimmer, who, in my opinion, like the second he gets fired, I mean, if it took firing Joe Barry to bring in Mike Zimmer, I'm all for it. I don't even care. Like, get that dude out of here and get Zimmer in. I don't even care. Like, or if he wants to be like an analyst in the role of like Mike Pettin or something like that. And then, we got a guy bringing it up here. AJ Dillon in 0-degree weather. I mean, he's already a tough guy to tackle. And I just think that this is something that Minnesota, if you can get on them early, which the Packers haven't done, they are a team that could quit. And you guys mentioned that Cousins had a great game. His numbers in the box score were great, but there's a lot of stuff that just wasn't sustainable. Yeah. Like he was pressured on 40% of his dropbacks. That is incredible. And that's a game that didn't have Rashawn Gary in it.
Yeah.
Now Gary is going to be back with Preston Smith and Kenny Clark a week removed from COVID. Like, to me, it's simple. Like, can they slow down Dalvin Cook enough to where he doesn't wreck the game and not let Justin Jefferson wreck the game? And without Adam Thielen, like, to me, take your corner, whether it's Douglas or Stokes, wherever he lines up, I don't care, and throw your safety over there and bracket that dude. And if he beats you, God bless him. Then he really might be the best receiver in football at that point if he beats you. But like if KJ Osborne and these other dudes that Minnesota has can beat you that way, then I can live with that too. But I think it's as simple as Green Bay just kind of do what you've been doing. They need to play a little bit better on defense. And then when Kirk throws you the ball, freaking catch it. Like that's really all it was. Savage had 1 pick taken away from a penalty and 2 that he dropped.
Hold on real quick with that interception. That didn't get talked about enough. That was an interception. I don't understand how that, I know we're a month past it, but that would have been the game. I mean, that call I still think about that call because that, to me, that was an interception.
One interception that was similar to that was Kevin King's.
No, I don't even think Kevin King. I think Kevin King's was an incomplete pass. Savage fell and his own elbow hit the ground, and that's when the ball came out. I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. We're way past it, but
yeah, it is. And I mean, the reality is, hold on to the damn ball and don't put it in the hands of the weirdest rule in the NFL, where the catch rule. Don't put it in the hands of that, and it doesn't matter. And then you add in Rasul Douglas could have had another pick too, and then the ball just like zing passes. I still don't really know how that pass.
Yeah, that was
completed,
weird. Yeah,
but all of that was weird. It was a weird game where the Vikings caught like every single break
They
that
did,
you could think
yeah.
of, and they won by 3 at the buzzer. So it's clear to me who the better team is. But as we've seen the last 2 weeks, just because you're the better team doesn't mean you're going to win and win comfortably. Green Bay has won, but I mean, you guys talked about it before I got here. A break here or there, a different play here or there, and we're looking at 2 straight losses to 2 mediocre to bad COVID-ravaged teams. So hopefully Green Bay's defense has got some stuff figured out and finds some of that mojo from earlier in the year.
Yeah, I see what you guys are talking about, the Vikings defense, and on paper, I know Ryno and Jacob, they suck. 29th, they're not good. They're giving up a ton of yards and a bunch of points. Harrison Smith, Anthony Barr, and Eric Kendrick still concern me. I still think those are 3 elite players at their position. I think Harrison Smith's arguably one of, if not the best safeties in the NFL, and Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks can wreck a game in the middle. Anthony Barr had 2 interceptions against Matt Stafford, and I know it was a Matt Stafford couple interceptions, but they concern me. I don't think it's something that's going to drastically change the outcome of the game. I think the Packers should and will win this game by 7+ points. I don't know what the spread is.
6.5.
Is it 6.5? So yeah, it's about what, a 3-point advantage for Green Bay outside of being at home. So yeah, I just think that there's another opportunity for Aaron Rodgers to break another one of Brett Favre's records, and it's not as prestigious as the one he just did, but currently has 54 touchdowns against this Vikings team, and that's tied for Brett Favre. So one more would shatter that record. But is it going to be a passing game? We talked about it in our group chat. I think that toe is an issue. I think it's going to be an issue. I'm a little bit concerned with that toe injury, especially when you get down to negative temperatures. It has to be an AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones game. Aaron Jones looked like a different player last weekend last Saturday against Cleveland. He was way more spry. He looked like he was hitting the hole a lot harder, a lot faster.
53 yards after contact he had.
Yeah, he had a really good game. So it has to be a ground and pound game. And I know the offensive line is banged up. I know you're down to your 4th and 5th left tackle and your center and your obviously Billy Turner's not playing. You're down to Dennis Kelly. I know that they're banged up out there, but it has to be a game where you establish the run, because this is a game on the flip side where, yes, Green Bay is better than Minnesota at almost every phase of the game outside of maybe special teams. But Dalvin Cook is that guy that can change it. He is that equalizer for Aaron Rodgers, because if he's able to control the clock and if he's able to gain Kevin Stefanski, like Ryno said, Jacob, I think you probably were listening prior, they lost that game. Had you ran Nick Chubb in any form or fashion and any design and however you want to scheme it up, they probably get into field goal range and win that game.
And I don't know why they didn't. Like they had time. They had time.
It's an atrocious coaching decision. I don't know why.
But
put the game in Baker Mayfield's hands is the
Kevin Stefanski. He got scared of 12. Like that's what it was. He got scared. He knew that they needed at least 10 to 15. I think it was maybe 20 yards. And he knew if he didn't get there, he would obviously, lose the game. But if he did get there and left too much time on the clock, he was going to face Aaron Rodgers to come back on the other side of the game, other side of the field. But Dalvin Cook is that dude that can just change the game. And Madison is the same way. He's just as good, not just as good. He's up there with Dalvin Cook. He's extremely talented. He runs kind of the same way. If you watch them too, you think they're the same player.
Yeah.
The way their style of run is very similar. So it worries me. I agree with you, Ryno. Kirk Cousins in primetime, you probably don't have a whole lot to worry about him. Justin Jefferson, as great as he is, going from a 70-degree controlled environment in Minnesota to 0-degree weather, he may have never played in a game this cold.
I don't believe he has.
He grew up in the South and he went to LSU and he plays in Minnesota. He may have never played in a game this cold. And I don't think there's been a game this year in which it was this cold. So could that affect him? It's going to slow him down, I think, because you're on natural grass versus what they play on Minnesota. So naturally they slow down. So I think, if you're Joe Barry, you got to have an answer for him, because last time you faced him, he absolutely destroyed you. But the other name that isn't getting totally talked about, and it's, I guess, rightfully so, but it's Tyler Conklin. I think he's having a great year. He's having a career year for himself. How are you going to cover him? Who's going to cover him? We saw tight ends in the past destroy Green Bay. That's another guy where that's a Kirk Cousins emergency outlet. And if they can control the clock with, those short 6-7 yard passes, 4 or 5 yards per carry. I mean, that takes Aaron Rodgers off the field. That takes, like Andy mentioned in the comments, it takes AJ Dillon off the field. Green Bay has to come out right away at this. This is Minnesota season. Like, this is it. You lose this game if you're a Vikings fan or you're on that organization, you're probably out of the playoffs because you got a ton of 7-7, 7-8, 8-7 teams.
And
right
guys getting fired, getting let go.
Exactly.
Team, like that stuff is always.
That's the only thing that scares me with this, guys. And I know Jacob hates when I say like they're due or, Minnesota has beaten Green Bay. Minnesota has beaten Green Bay over the last few years more than any other divisional opponent. And now they're desperate. Like, this is it for them. Like we talked about their Vikings in week 12. It was their Super Bowl. It was. This is Super Bowl 2 for them. This is it. They have a chance to two things. Number one, upset Green Bay at home on national TV and take them out of potentially the number 1 seed. And number 2, it springs them into contention into the 7th seed, maybe 6th seed, depending on how the playoffs go. Like, this is it for them. This is everything they got. They're putting all their eggs into this one basket. I don't like desperate teams in football because if anybody that's watched football before, usually the better team does win, and that bodes right for, I think, like 85% of the time. But there is that percentage where that team that is just going out and doing everything goes into a hostile environment like Lambeau Field and wins. And that's just my concern. But I do think Green Bay wins.
Couple things I want to touch on very quickly. As far as Aaron Rodgers' toe is concerned, I would be willing to bet they have some sort of protection built into his shoe going into this game, especially
they may have already had that, though. They may have already had that, though.
They didn't have any kind of plate in his shoe because that would have been talked about by Troy Aikman and Joe Buck for about 4 hours on Saturday.
And Foot Fetish Packers Twitter.
Yeah. So he will have some sort of, whether it's some sort of like composite or some sort of plate built into that shoe, he will have some sort of protection to stop any kind of injury from happening from offensive linemen stepping on him too. He'll have more drugs injected into that toe than Robert Downey Jr. So I don't think his toe is going to feel anything on Sunday. And 2, you talk about desperation, but if I were to look at Aaron Rodgers in desperation mode, I'd bet a paycheck on that. I mean, we saw that in 2016 when they ran the table. They played 6 straight games with desperation mode. Kirk Cousins in desperation mode isn't a guy that I would bet a nickel on. And he's proven that his entire career.
Yeah, but I don't think it's Kirk Cousins that I'm not worried about Kirk Cousins. I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about what Kirk Cousins has around him because as Packer fans, we like to make fun of the Vikings and laugh at them and their stadium and their horn that they blow and they suck. That's true. But they have really good talent on that offensive side. And I know their defense sucks, but they also have talent on the defensive side of the ball as well.
Yeah, and they've matched up well with Green Bay. And like I mentioned, I got a lot of respect for Mike Zimmer, the defensive mind. I understand all that. But like Minnesota, like I know they've got all that talent with Cook and Jefferson, but I don't think they can block this Packers front, especially true with the biggest thing with the Packers too is just like stay disciplined. Something about Rashawn Gary is like jumping inside and sucking up two guys in one run fill. And that's why like Dearness Johnson had that big run on Saturday. And it was basically Gary's fault. Like there's a bunch of stuff like that. I just don't think they can block what we've got. And even though, the Packers are going to be missing some of their defensive linemen, their 3 best front 7 players are still playing on Sunday. So ultimately, I would be very surprised if Dalvin Cook has another game similar to the one he had last year on Halloween at Lambeau Field, where it was a nightmare for the Packers as a whole. And honestly, like I know we've talked a lot about the Packers run defense and everything, but a lot of the yards they've given up the last, 3 weeks, save for Baker Mayfield, were current Hall of Famer Justin Fields running and Tyler Huntley running. So you can't you've got a lot of those yards. 100, I think it was like 140 of the yards gained on the ground by the Ravens and the Bears between those two have been the quarterback.
Yeah.
Well, let's not forget very quickly. Let's not forget too that Cleveland has one of the best offensive lines in football. They average, or they don't. I can't remember what the number is. They average, but they're third in the league as a team in rushing. The Vikings are not that. They do not have. They do not have the offensive line that Cleveland has. So let's not forget that either.
No, I agree. And Jacob, you're right. It is running quarterbacks destroyed them over those 2 weeks, and the Bears put up 30 points. And Obviously, special teams aided that. It wasn't all Justin Fields, but it's still worrisome. I do
But
think
a Hall of Famer, I mean, I got to give that man credit. 8 starts and he's in the Hall of Fame. That is.
Don't look at his QBR because it's not real apparently, and it's not his fault. Everything, you know what's funny though, real quick, because I wouldn't be a show without a dig at the Bears. They make fun of Aaron Rodgers for only having 1 Super Bowl and the Packers for only having 2 Super Bowls over 30 years, and that's fine. Nothing is Justin Fields' fault. Nothing. Nope. I had a guy on Twitter when Rasul Douglas had the pick 6. Darnell Mooney, who's running an out route. Anybody that watches football or knows football knows an out route to the sidelines, was mad that Darnell Mooney didn't come back and make a play on that underthrown ball. It's just, it's a fan base that's in shambles.
And now all of a sudden, too, PFF grading is the holy grail of statistics in football. He's one of the top PFF graded quarterbacks over the last 6 weeks. Oh God! All right.
Well, I'll say this: I understand why they're excited. Right? He's really talented. They've never had anything that resembles good quarterback play, save for some stretches of smoking Jay Cutler there in Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't understand the national media gushing all over this dude as if, like, honestly, like the offense moves better with Andy Dalton and Nick Foles. Now, I'm not saying those guys are better players, but
Nick Foles had a good game on Sunday.
But they've played better than current Hall of Famer Justin Fields has. And not just that, it's just like, everything is not Matt Nagy's fault. And I'm not saying Matt Nagy's a good coach, but like we cannot blame this man for everything that goes wrong in Chicago. This is the same infrastructure that got Mitchell Trubisky to the playoffs twice.
Every year he was there.
And it's not the complete clown show. I believe they said this is Nagy's first losing season.
It is. Mitchell Trubisky went to the playoffs 3 straight years. His rookie year, they went 12-4. And then they went 8-8 and 8-8, which were 3 playoff appearances with the same structure, almost the same personnel,
and save for a double doink, they win a playoff game.
Yeah, like right. I get it. I understand. Yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
They've had a lot of different things go wrong. I understand why they're excited. I understand if it were me on that side of things, and thank God it isn't, but I would be probably saying a lot of the same things. I just don't understand the unwillingness to at least maybe say, hey, he's not perfect yet, and like. This offseason, what'll happen, they'll hire a new coach, they'll hire a new coordinator, and all we'll hear about is how everything's going to be different because Fields is in a different system with bums. Their roster stinks. Darnell Mooney is going to be their best receiver next year. I like Darnell Mooney, but that should not be a number one receiver.
And their wide receiver core stinks. Their roster does not stink. I mean, David Montgomery is a good back. Cole Kmet is a good tight end. Their roster doesn't stink. It's not good. It's not bad.
Well, I disagree.
When they cut Mack and Hicks,
I was just going to say their defense is gone.
Well, the defensive side will be terrible.
They'll have Roquan, and that's literally probably it.
And they have 4 draft picks because they've traded them all for God knows. I mean, Justin Fields. And if Fields is good, then obviously that trade is worth it.
People call for the head of Matt Nagy. They ought to be calling for the head of Ryan Pace.
They are.
I can't believe that there are people. No, but there are people that are okay with him staying
because he drafted Fields.
Everyone called him one of the best GMs in football during the draft, but it took 3-4 weeks for them to call. Ryan Pace is worse for that team than Matt Nagy is.
Well, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and we're way past the time that I told Ryno we were going to go to tonight.
It's
but
right. I don't mind.
Real quick, this is what I was talking
baby
about.
Ain't coming out yet.
This is what I was talking about with Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to go to the AFC West, and you're going to have to face Mahomes twice a year and Justin Herbert twice a year. You're going to be in the NFC North, and you're going to, even if you digress a little bit as far as a personnel standpoint, and they're in a little bit of cap hell, but there's ways to fix that. There's plenty of ways to fix that. And there's nobody better than Russ Ball to do that. And like Jacob said, the only one that knows how to do it. No matter what Twitter tells you, he has his best chance in Green Bay, no matter where. Look around the National Football League. There's not a better situation for Aaron Rodgers. Denver is not it. I know Denver can get a haul, but he is not going to want to go to a division where he's going to have to compete with future Hall of Famer Patrick Mahomes and an up-and-coming absolute stud in Justin Herbert.
And the only teams where it would be add too.
Exactly.
The only team that would be a good situation for him, the only teams that exist that would be a good situation for him already have established quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Bucks. I mean, there is no team he can go to right now where he'll have even close to a chance of competing than he would in Green Bay.
And where you're the unquestioned favorite in the division. Because like New Orleans would be a good situation, but New Orleans with Rodgers better than Tampa Bay with that group and Tom Brady? No. Probably not. Here in Green Bay, it's a Hall of Famer in Justin Fields, obviously. And then you have Jared Goff and maybe Kirk Cousins. Like the Vikings are going to be in a mini rebuild type situation if they fire Zimmer, and who knows what they do with Cousins and Smith and Barr and Kendricks, and all them dudes are getting older. And Danielle Hunter's been banged up the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It's almost like the situation Brady had in the AFC East, where it's okay, we show up, we have a free pass to the playoffs because every other team in this division sucks.
It's a good point. Yeah.
Like the team that, like, if we're sitting here right now, this time a year from now, Aaron Rodgers comes back, the team that you think is the second best team in the division is Chicago. Like maybe.
Yeah. If you were to pull a team out of a hat between those three, I wouldn't argue with you.
Yeah.
Because any one of those three could be the second place team next year. It could even be the Lions. I mean,
I think the Vikings, like the Vikings are in a better situation right now than they will be 12 months from now, most likely. And the Packers still clinched the division before Christmas Day. Yeah. That's incredible to me.
That's an excellent point, because you're right, Jacob. I was just going to say that Minnesota is probably, if they lose Sunday, they're probably, I know technically they're not out of the playoff picture, but more than likely they will be. That's a rebuild. I mean, you're due $84 million for Kirk Cousins. You're probably going to pay, Jefferson's in the rookie deal, and you're going to have Dalvin Cook to re-up soon, but Zimmer's probably gone, and that coaching staff is probably gone. And you're looking at it, and Harrison Smith is getting up there in age, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks as well. I mean, they're not getting any younger, kind of like what we were seeing in Chicago with Hicks and Mack and Eddie Jackson. You're looking at a defense that could have been great, that was good, but wasn't good enough to get you into playoff successes. So yeah, he's got his best shots in Green Bay. I mean, I know we're backtracking, but that's where he belongs. That's where I think he stays. And if he doesn't, then he retires. That's his only options. So any final thoughts real quick for you fine gentlemen on the Packers, we'll throw it up on Jeddah, if you want to talk about Jeddah.
34-23 Green Bay.
That's what we're going to do next. Your predictions.
Oh.
I thought you said it, Ryno, initially. Did you not say it when you were initially talking? You may not have said it, but go ahead with your prediction.
I didn't give a score prediction.
Go ahead with your prediction.
34-23 Green Bay.
Okay.
27-24 Packers, and I think it resembles a lot of what like the last 2 or 3 weeks have been, where they start slow, nuke the team in the second and third quarter, and hang on late. It'll be annoying but effective. and if it's annoying but effective for the next 5 weeks, I'm good, because one thing I love about and I do like college football, obviously, I watch it every week, but one thing I love about the NFL is there are no style points. There are no good losses or this loss. I remember, like, Ryno, what year was it that Alabama beat Georgia in the SEC title when Jalen Hurts came in? That was like 4 years ago, right?
3 years ago. Yeah.
Sure. Something like that. Well, then they're talking about like putting Georgia in the playoff because they lost, and that loss looks better than this team's win or loss. It's like, man, forget that. Like,
well, that actually happened to Bama. Bama lost. They didn't make it to that SEC title game a couple of years ago because they lost during the regular season, but they still got into the playoffs, and I believe they went on and won a national title that year.
Probably. It's kind of like a flip of a coin if Bama wins the title or not. You could pretty much guess that they did, and you're probably right. That's just how that works. But the point I'm making is that when you win, like if the Packers had won the way they did the last 2 weeks, and this was college football, we're talking about the college football committee looking at them differently because they didn't win impressively enough. Like it's the NFL. You win or you don't. And when you do, it's a good thing. And I'll take annoying but effective all the way to the Super Bowl. I don't care what the computer cowboys say and the people that say they're not winning by enough points. Like I don't care, because ultimately I remember the 6-10 Packers from 2008. And everybody's like, man, they had a lot of close losses. It's like, well, yeah, but they still went 6-10. So like at the end of it, you got to win or you got to lose. And you win more games than you lose, you're in a good position. And Green Bay has won more games than any team in the NFL. And I don't understand, not trying to go all small market fan on you guys, but I don't understand why 2 of the last 3, and even last year to some point, this Packers team just gets so disrespected in groups like that because they don't win pretty enough. It's like but they're winning, and they're winning a lot. like more than any team in the NFL over the last 3 years, and they can beat anybody. They can. Dallas, Tampa, Los Angeles, you name your team, Kansas City, if they get to the Super Bowl, whatever.
Yeah.
They can beat all of those teams, and they can. And I think that right now, if you're sitting here on December 30th asking me who wins the Super Bowl, my pick's the Green Bay Packers because I think they're the best team. And I think that's what's going to matter at the end of the day. And that's going to start on Sunday night. So 27-24.
I like it, Ryno. I like your prediction. I'm going to go 27-20. I think, honestly, it's going to probably be like a typical Packer game. You start off slow in the first quarter, pick it up in the second, go into half with a closer game. And I think Green Bay pulls away a little bit in that third and fourth quarter, kind of what we've seen all year out of them, especially at home. And then, I would not be surprised if you're able to get Minnesota down into double digits to see a little bit of quit in that team, because that's probably it for that team, obviously, with their season, especially what happens Sunday in the earlier games prior at the 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock set. So you could see an even bigger score, but I think it's going to be closer because Green Bay, just for whatever reason, like 2019 was really good. Matt LaFleur's scripted plays were excellent. 2020, it was okay. And this year it's just been awful. Like, I don't know how many, I don't have the number in front of me or in my head, how many 3-and-outs
they averaged less than 3 points per game in the first quarter this season. A team with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
I think you'll see that trend end on Sunday, and I think you'll see Rodgers throw a staple in his MVP candidacy. Sorry about the dogs.
No, you're fine. He's ready. He's like, it's been an hour and 15 minutes. We're ready to go. So no, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on another fun episode of Cut the BS. Again, you guys can follow Ryno at Sports Talk Ryno. And then if you don't follow Jacob, I highly recommend not following him, but give him a follow at Jacob Westendorf. Gentlemen, thank you once again. If you guys are listening to this podcast, please do not forget to subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, drop a thumbs up. If you're listening on your smart device, don't forget to subscribe. We're available wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget to follow Game On Wisconsin on social media at Game On WI. That will do it. I will see you guys next Thursday. Have a wonderful evening, a happy new year, and a great weekend. Talk to you later.
Go Pack.